Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm really excited to be debuting yet another new series on this channel called Team Review Thursday. As you know, I've been expanding this channel this past week by, pumping out new content, starting out a bunch of new video ideas, and this is another one that I've been meaning to do for a while, so I decided, be a nice way to finally get it started. Of course, the whole idea behind this series is you guys submit to me your teams over the week, and on Thursday I do pick one of them to be reviewed and analyzed, and, look over it, show off the cool things about the team, and, suggest maybe some potential edits I would make. That way, one lucky person gets their team featured on the channel, but, I'll do my best to actually respond to all your emails. It kind of blew my mind since I think I had over 250 team submissions, so thank you all so much. It means a lot for that many people to come out and just, show interest in the series. And I really will do my best to respond to all of you, but there are so many emails, so if I take a while, please bear with me. But today we'll be featuring a team from David, and I really like David's team here because it's got a bunch of standard sets in Pokemon, but it also has, I think, a bunch of, I would say, quote-unquote, standard Pokemon, but haven't been used as much and I think are maybe a bit underrated, namely the Charizard, the Latios, and the Scizor. So what I'm going to do first is show you all the movesets, EV spreads that he designed, and then suggest maybe potential edits. I'm doing this on Showdown because I think it looks better for simplicity's sake, and it's pretty hard to get these teams, quickly in game. So let's get into it. So David, the main Mega Evolution and the only one really on his team is Charizard with a very standard moveset. You do see the EV spread down here. It's actually a very complex one, meant to allow it to survive basically even a Rock Slide from Adamant Land OT and a Draco Meteor from Specs Hydreigon. So you don't have much special attack and speed investment, but he does have a ton of speed control on this team, which kind of makes up for the lack of speed. And the thing is, Charizard Y already has a really great base special attack, and then you have the Sun from its ability as well. So Heat Wave and Overheat is already doing a ton of damage, and a lot of the times you don't need that extra special attack investment. I do think bulky Charizard is a very intelligent call. If you look at previous Charizard Ys that worked out, I think the biggest example is at the 2014 World Championships, where both Jody and Ryosuke, who were in the top 8, used much bulkier Charizard spreads than the typical max special attack and speed investment kind of spread. So I like this Charizard a lot, and I think it's a very good starting point. Next one is Scarf Land OT, is also a pretty typical moveset of EQ, Rock Slide, U-Turn, and Superpower. He does have, you see, a good amount of EVs invested in HP, and that's because with that HP and defense, he can actually survive +1 Life Orb Sucker Punch from Bishop 100% of the time, which I think is a really good survival rate, and I think it's definitely worth EVing in there, just because, Landorus's base special attack is already, is already really high, so another really good EV spread from him here. Another a pretty bulky Pokemon here in Zapdos, also a typical moveset of T-Bolt, Tailwind, HP Ice, and Roost, Safety Goggles, and another bulky EV spread that allows it to survive Double Edge from Kangaskhan and Draco Meteor from Specs Hydreigon. So, you do see there's a pretty common trend so far of really strong attacks and attackers, but at the same time enough bulk to really survive the most popular attackers in the format, which is actually something I like to do a lot, so it's a really great starting point. This next one is a Pokemon you should be really familiar with at this point, since I've used it for basically about all of VGC 2015, but it's this Focus Sash, Sludge Bomb, Icy Wind, Taunt, Will-O-Wisp, Gengar, so basically the support set with max special attack and speed. Now this next one is actually a Pokemon I really like, and one I think is severely underrated this year, Latios. Latios dominated VGC 2012 and 2013 due to its ability to get a fast Draco Meteor off, and with Dragon Gem and before the nerf, it actually one-hit KO'd most of the common Pokemon in the format. You could even chunk out a huge amount of damage on Cresselia. So now, of course, Latios does not get access to Dragon Gem because Dragon Gem isn't in the format, and Draco Meteor's power is reduced. So the thing is, Draco Meteor cannot really pick up the same one-hit KOs it can before, and VGC 2015 is a much more paced metagame than, say, 2012 or 2013. However, I do think it still has its viability in this format, and I do think it still has a lot of potential. I know one of the best players in the world, Colin Hire, the Battle Room, who finished 3rd at Worlds last year, has been using it, and he's been saying a bunch of great things about it. So I think it's a Pokemon that's pretty underrated just because we haven't seen it much. I think a lot of people just dismissed it immediately, but it's still got a lot of firepower. David here's got a moveset of Draco Meteor, Psyshock, Tailwind, Protect, and your typical 4-252, 252 spread, which on Latios really makes perfect sense. This last one is actually a Pokemon that's very near and dear to my heart in Lump Scizor, or just Scizor in general. If you guys are newer to me playing VGC, I actually used Scizor for the majority of VGC 2012 and 2013. It was on my 2012 winning Nationals team, and I also used it to get top 16 at Nationals in 2013. I think it's a really good Pokemon. Back then, I used a Swords Dance set with Swords Dance, Bug Bite, Bullet Punch, Protect, and Steel Gem, because back then, if you could get a Swords Dance off, the +2 the Bullet Punch would actually pick up 1-hit KOs on so many things after the Steel Gem boost. So unfortunately, Steel Gem isn't around either. David opted for a set of Bullet Punch, Bug Bite, Feint, and Protect. He's got a 4-252-252 spread for simplicity's sake. So, in general, I think it's a really solid team. You know, there are lots of really strong Pokemon. I like the mix between offense and defense. You know, he's got 2 physical type attackers, 4 special type attackers, so it's a decent mix. And typically, you know, it's a bit more concerning when you have more physical type attackers, just because you have to deal with Intimidate and Will-O-Wisp a bit more. He's also got tons of speed control, because Latios has Tailwind, Gengar has Icy Wind, Zapdos has Tailwind as well, so that's pretty good. But there are definitely a couple of notable holes, I'd say. The first one is, well, first of all, I'll actually refer you to this Team Magma Team Builder, which I think is super helpful. You can pull up basically all the resistances and even coverage that your team gets. So if we look at the resistances part, you know, the Team Magma Team Builder is convenient enough to give you like parts where it says, oh, your team should probably look into covering this because you don't have any resistances to it. And I think the 2 biggest ones that I'd be worried about are Rock and Ghost. And Dark, actually, because these 3 types, he has no Pokemon that resist it, and this is a bit concerning because it means that you don't get many safe switch-ins. So it's like Dark Pulse from Hydreigon hits everything for neutral damage here. You know, you could imagine a Scarf Hydreigon giving him some trouble. You know, Rock is the biggest one. I think the weakness to Rock Slide here is really, really scary, especially because you're using a Charizard. And Charizard, of course, does not like to take Rock Slides. Of course, Landorus gets Intimidate, and there's some Pokemon that can beat the Rock Slide users, like HPS from Zapdos, but still, generally, I think Rock Slide's like such a good move in VGC that you want to have a bunch of Pokemon that at least resist it. Ghost is also kind of concerning just because like Aegislash and Gengar can Shadow Ball away, and there's not much that can resist it, especially with Latios being weak to it. So, you know, it's a bit frail. I mean, it's a bulky team, but the fact that it doesn't have any resistances to these 3 types is probably a pretty big one that I would look out for. If we look at coverage here, it looks like it's pretty good, right? It's got coverage on most things, no flying, no water, no dark or fairy, but in general, it's got alright coverage, right? So it's in that sense, it's alright. But you also have to consider, you know, what things are this team weak to? Like, can we think of any specific Pokemon that it's weak to? Because that's one of the biggest ones. In this email, he actually mentioned to me he was really weak to Heatran, which you guys can probably see, and Rain in general. I think Heatran is a really concerning one here for him because let's look at the team. You know, Charizard can't hit it at all. Zapdos, Thunderbolt does not really do very much to Heatran. Gengar, Sludge Bomb, Icy Wind can't touch it. Latios can't touch it with Draco and Psyshock. Scizor can't touch it either. So he basically has, you know, you'd have to rely on Landorus T's Earthquake here to hit it, and that is not exactly, you know, the best way to deal with it. Of course, it's a great way to deal with it, but you kind of want more than just one Pokemon that can check it. So, you know, as we edit this team, we're probably going to want to look for a Pokemon that can beat Heatran, or at least put on a move, because there are really 2 things you can do to edit a team. The first of all is, you know, change some moves to really improve matchups. I think a good example of this that I like to refer to is back in VGC 2014 when I was using like Hariyama, Mawile, and whatnot. I noticed my team was originally really weak to Charizard, so I ended up putting Rock Slide on both Hariyama and Mawile. Of course, I lost a bit of coverage there, but it was for a specific matchup, and it really came in handy because I faced a lot of Charizards. So sometimes it's worth putting on a tech move onto one of your Pokemon to beat, you know, one of the threats to your Pokemon, because, you know, it just improves the matchup so much more. I think, you know, as we look at this, one of the best suggestions I can think of without changing any of the Pokemon is actually maybe putting HP Ground on Latios over Tailwind. Reason being, we already have Tailwind on this Zapdos. We already have Icy Wind on this Gengar. So, you know, speed control, we're not too worried about. By putting HP Ground on this Latios with the Life Orb, you can actually knock out most Heatrans, and a lot of the times, you know, they won't expect it. Of course, it's a bit hard to get in game, but if you're practicing online, I think it's definitely worth it. And I don't know, I think it's a pretty solid answer to the Heatran if you want to just go with it, because otherwise I can't really think of any great ways to deal with it with this team. I mean, you could run Focus Blast on Charizard, but Focus Blast is not exactly the best of moves, especially with that low accuracy. But I think we might want to consider changing a Pokemon or 2 here just because of the weakness to Rock. But I guess first I would do is suggest general changes without, you know, changing any of the Pokemon. I actually like the majority of the sets. I think I would personally change Tailwind to HP Ground. I'd also consider changing Scizor to a Sword Stance set and maybe editing the EV spread a bit, just because I'm not sure if it needs all that speed. We can actually take a look at the speed tier list for that, but that comes down to personal preference. Another thing is, if you're playing with Icy Wind and Tailwind though, you don't need like max speed investment most of the time. But the reason why I would suggest Swords Dance over Feint, which is actually a really cool move because of course it breaks Protect, so it allows you to make some cool plays like Feint Heat Wave, Feint Draco Meteor, or whatnot, where you can just nuke your Pokemon immediately. But I don't know, I personally like Swords Dance a lot, and I think Scizor is one of those Pokemon that a lot of people are ill prepared for because it's not that common right now in the format. So there are a bunch of situations where I can imagine you could just get into Scizor and set up a Swords Dance for free while they can't do very much about it. And the thing is, if this particular Scizor, for example, is intimidated, it doesn't really get to do very much because you have no way of increasing your attack power. Bullet Punch would be, you know, at -1 from Intimidate, and Bug Bite wouldn't do that much. I think a Swords Dance, you know, of course I am a bit biased because I used this in previous VGC years, but that way you can even put on offensive pressure despite being, say, intimidated by a Pokemon like Landorus T. Otherwise, though, I think the team is pretty solid in terms of moves and whatnot, and those are the 2 small changes I'd maybe make in terms of just editing the moves and EVs, because the EVs look really good to me. But, you know, we might want to edit a bit further. I think the main concerning thing is how do we take care of this Rock Slide weakness. The first thing that actually jumps into mind is Wide Guard. Wide Guard is a really good move because of course you can just block Rock Slides. It's a really good, you know, thing to pair up with Charizard as well as Zapdos. Another thing is, I guess, like, personally, if I were to use this team, I'd be pretty scared of fighting against Gengar, plus a fire type. The main reason is, you know, you have to consider like these possible scenarios. So imagine like a Gengar and a Heatran, or maybe even a Gengar and a Bisharp. I think just in general, like, Bisharp is also a pretty threatening Pokemon because Dark, as I mentioned earlier, is able to hit everything. As like, it can Sucker Punch Lando and Charizard, it can knock off Zapdos, Gengar, Latios, and Scizor, and maybe you can get a burn, but Gengar and Latios, of course, being as frail as they are, doesn't take too well to knock off, say, from Bisharp. So we might want to have something to beat like Bisharp and Gengar, and can Wide Guard. And actually, just like thinking on the top of my head, Conkeldurr is a pretty darn good answer to all of those. Like, I would maybe suggest a Conkeldurr here, because what Conkeldurr can do is it can knock off Gengar, it can Mach Punch Bisharp, and it resists Rock Slide, and it gets access to Wide Guard. I think it's like a pretty versatile, you know, set in general there. So if I were to recommend something, you know, a possible edit to this team, you know, maybe I'd get rid of the Scizor. Just because, you know, it's nice, but how much is it really helping us here? The thing is, Scizor has some interesting coverages. Like, I think it was really good in 2012 and 2013 because, you know, it really covered some of the common Pokemon like Cresselia or Tyranitar and whatnot. And of course, you know, these changes are just personal changes I'm making, like, and I'm, you know, doing this on the top of my head. So of course you might even have better suggestions in the comments below. I'd love to see how your team building process would work here. But I think just Conkeldurr seems like it could work a lot here. And based off his team, if you really take a look at it, like I noticed that he doesn't have a Citrus Berry, so what we could actually do is get rid of this Scizor and perhaps add like a Conkeldurr here. I think that would be pretty interesting. I think one of my best friends, Aaron Trailer, if you guys watch St. Louis Regionals, he actually won Regionals with a Citrus Berry conch. And that way, you know, you can have Wide Guard, because I think Wide Guard would be really important for this team to support the Charizard and maybe the Zapdos as well. So you could run Wide Guard, Drain Punch, Ice Punch. And the thing is, I think Knockoff would be nice here, but we might have to opt for Mach Punch just for better coverage. And for the EV spread, it's a bit tricky here. Ability, you tend to like to go Guts because you can switch into Will-O-Wisps and whatnot. So we can probably go for an Admin. We can actually pull out the damage calculator here, so let's take a look at the damage calc. I should have that ready, but yeah. That is not the damage calc. I have it bookmarked, but just going to quickly look that up real quick. 1 sec. Yeah, I should be using the Nugget Bridge one, but oh well. The main thing I want to check here is for, like, I guess Kangaskhan Double Edge against Conch. Let's see. Double Edge. Yeah, I don't have a great Citrus Berry spread. I've never asked Aaron for his either. So, let's see. Whoa, what? It takes Double Edge that easily? Oh, this is not normal Mega King. I was like, come on. It can't. There we go. So, let's see how much this Double Edge does with just max HP investment. Oh wow, look at that. It survives without any defense investment, which is pretty nice already. Okay, another move we want to check is probably like Specs Draco Meteor from Hydreigon. So let's get this. Modest, it's gonna be a lot. Like you already see, like that's a pretty big, obviously it's a one-hit KO there. So the real question is how much special defense we really want to invest, because like it's pretty rare to see Modest max special attack like a Hydreigon, even though that's something I'd like to use. A lot of times people like to take out some special attack for both. If you guys watch St. Louis, Aaron actually played Andrew Worley, I believe, in the top 4, and this exact scenario happened where Choice Specs Hydreigon ended up using a Draco on his Conkeldurr. I don't know. Let's like, how much special attack do we really want before it gets kind of ridiculous? Like, it's still a damage roll even with this much investment, but we don't need that much attack either, I guess. And of course, I am making this spread on the spot, so it's definitely not an ideal spread, but it's just some quick thinking. Let's see. Like, it's still an 87.5% chance to KO. Oh, whoops, no. Yeah, that's way too much investment. How much of a roll do we want to make it? 62. Let's see. Yeah, like it's hard to really make a spread here because, you know, we haven't really tested it much, and the thing is Hydreigon's actually not that much of a concern because I have Latios to just outright beat that, so maybe I shouldn't be that worried about it. Let's see Timid. Yeah, let's EV to survive Timid. Okay. So nope, bit more. Yeah, 188. Alright, I'm fine with that. That's a really generic spread, but let's just go 252, 188, and 68 into attack. Okay, so we got rid of Scizor for Conkeldurr, and I actually like that change a lot. Like, it actually covered so many of the weaknesses that I felt like the team had maybe before. So if we look at this, you know, adding Conkeldurr, putting the resistances, gives us a resistance to Rock and a resistance to Dark. And the thing is, the nice thing about Conkeldurr is Gengar can't really do too much to it because it's relatively bulky, especially with how much special attack or special defense investment we put there. So like, now Gengar's Sludge Bomb won't be doing too much to Conk. And Ice Punch is a 2-hit KO, and it can bait a Will-O-Wisp, and it can even switch into Gengar's Will-O-Wisp. So, you know, Gengar was a Pokemon I thought, you know, might be a bit scary to play up against, and this actually improves our Heatran matchup as well. Wow, it feels like this Conkeldurr does everything. Of course, it's a bit slow, and it's always a bit weird playing with the slow Pokemon on the rest of the team, but I think it could definitely work. The other thing we might want to consider is this Zapdos, which has safety goggles, which I'm not sure if is the ideal item on it, just because, like, I feel like maybe Leftovers, maybe Rocky Helmet could work a bit better, though it's not like this team has a terrible Kangaskhan weak, or it's not terribly weak to Kangaskhan. So let's see what happens when we replace this Scizor for Conkeldurr if we're weak to any types, because that's the thing I consider the most when team building is like synergy to types and whatnot. So yeah, you know, it looks a bit better. It looks like, you know, now we got the resistance to Rock. Oh, but we do have the Ice and Dragon weakness now, which we might want to consider a bit as well. Weakness to Ice is something I'm not too fond of. The Dragon's not exactly great either. But we have to kind of think of the Pokemon that can really threaten us with Dragon types and Ice type attacks. Just because, like, Conkeldurr actually deals with Pokemon that throw out those Dragon type attacks and Ice type attacks pretty well. Yeah, so maybe we want another Steel type on the team, but at this point it's actually hard to consider, you know, who do we want to get rid of? This is one of the cases where at this point I probably play a bunch of practice games and figure out which is the weakness link and go from there. And that's why team building is such a long process, because you never get the perfect team, you know, it's like rinsing and repeating and trying things out and whatnot. Let's see, Charizard's weak to electric types, and the thing is Conkeldurr actually deals with the common electric types like Rotom, Wash, Thundurus, and Zapdos really well. I don't know, I personally think Conkeldurr ends up being a pretty good fit on this team, especially with that wide guard coverage. But at the same time, I guess I'm a bit concerned because Gengar and Latios are both really, really frail, but at the same time, like, I've used Terrakion, Bisharp, and Gengar on the same team before, so, like, that's not really a big concern. If anything, maybe I'd consider Shadow Ball here, though I don't know, Sludge Bomb's actually really good for Fairy coverage, because otherwise, like, there's not much great Fairy coverage on this team. So yeah, I mean, I think the Scizor to Conkeldurr switch is something, probably the most immediate switch I'd make, but also, like, it opens a bit of a weakness to Fairy type, so we want something to cover Fairy, Ice, and Dragon. So like putting on a steel type is relatively obvious here. If anything, I would personally get rid of the Zapdos, but that's based on my play style. Like I wouldn't, you know, just get rid of one because for the sake of getting rid of one. But Gengar here could actually, I could see, you know, losing Gengar here as well. So at this point in the team building process, I would say it comes down to practice and personal preference. You know, really play, see which Pokemon cater to your playstyle and which ones don't. But I think Conkeldurr does cover up most of the main weaknesses that I saw with this team here, especially because he mentioned he was a bit weak to Rain originally as well, and Wide Guard blocks, you know, those spread attacks, though I guess there aren't that many from Rain. But at the same time, it's bulky, you can get Drain Punches off, and it's not like Poly, Kingdra, or Ludi, like dealing with Drain Punch and then Mach Punch consequently. So, yeah, I mean, in the end, ultimately, I made one big Pokemon change, getting rid of Scizor, which is kind of a shame because I love Scizor, but I felt like Conkeldurr would have worked out a lot better here, and it did cover a lot of the weaknesses, and I think it's alright being weak to the Ice and Dragon, though I think the thing is Charizard can deal with most Pokemon that get Ice-type attacks off, and like most of the Pokemon that are using Ice-type attacks aren't actually Ice-type, so we can, you know, just KO them before they do anything. But yeah, I mean, that is it for this one, I think, guys. I think maybe in the future I'd actually like to revisit teams that I edit, so you know, play a couple of practice games, or maybe you know, if this is something you guys would like to see, you know, actually watch me play a couple of games on Shodan and then edit it further. It would end up being a pretty long series, but this is the first episode, so I'd love to hear any feedback. But you know, I was able to walk through his entire team, so you know, you do get to see some pretty cool sets and Pokemon featured, and then you get to see my personal process and how I would maybe edit it slightly. And of course, it was pretty fast there, so you know, when you're building a team, you should spend longer other than just like a 20 minutes editing it. But I thought it was a pretty cool way to feature new teams on this channel without, you know, using some of my own stuff, and I'd love to, you know, it's cool to feature some of your content as well. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. Thanks again to David for submitting this team. Try out the Conkeldurr. I think it would work out pretty well on your team. But yeah, anyways, that's it for this one, guys. Leave any feedback, whether you appreciated it, what you want to see specifically more of, what you want to see less of, whatnot. I'd really appreciate any feedback since this is pretty new to me as well. But that's it for this one, guys. I'll see you next time. Alright, peace.